The Woman of the Year award, supported by Virgin Atlantic, goes to Dylan Mulvaney.
Hello, London! I am so honored to be here with you all tonight. And, you know, some see me as the Woman of the Year. Some see me as a woman of a year and some change, as I only publicly came out online 560 days ago. And some people don't see me as a woman at all. I know, which is why receiving this honor from a queer publication like Attitude means so much more to me. Because here's what I've realized. You ready? Okay. So, no matter how hard I try, or what I wear, or what I say, or what surgeries I get, I will never reach an acceptable version of womanhood by those hateful people's standards. But as long as I have the queer community that sees me for my truth, I'm gonna be okay. And I'm equally grateful that this title is happening in the UK, and not just because I am deeply attracted to your accents, which I am, but because I came to London on holiday this summer after months of feeling isolated. And when I arrived, I didn't feel that baggage that I was carrying back in the US. And I didn't feel like the trans beer girl.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So it's been a really long time since I've done a Bud Light update. The boycott, of course, continues. Even if people have forgotten about it, they don't go and pick up a Bud Light at the same time. They just get on with it and don't even think about it. They just don't buy it. And I think that's what's been happening. And Bud Light are getting very, very desperate now. First, their spaces on the shelves have been threatened. And they're doing everything they can to not lose their shelf space. Every time I go into my local supermarkets, I still see Bud Light hasn't been touched. All the other beers, it seems that people are purchasing them. But when you go to Bud Light, the shelf is completely full. It's not moving. These are desperate times for Bud Light. And the legacy of their bad decision, their bad, terrible, disastrous marketing decision continues, with Dylan Mulvaney winning Woman of the Year recently. When Dylan is in the news for any reason, it's a reminder of just how much they messed up and what they co-signed and what they support. And that's not going away anytime soon, if ever. The Anheuser-Busch is giving out incentives worth $150 million just to keep their beers on the shelf. Never mind the fact that the beer isn't selling, without the shelf space, there's absolutely no hope for them. So they're pulling out everything to ensure that distributors do not turn their backs on them. So the incentives include reimbursements to distributors for certain freight and fuel surcharges, and given an extra 5 days to pay their bills to the brewery. I imagine for those who are having some cash flow concerns, this would help somewhat, one distributor told the Post. So you remember the CEO, when he did various interviews, he said that they're really going to try and look after their distributors. They're going to try and give them some sort of assistance in these trying times amid the boycott. So it still includes a financial aid package for distributors. And this began all the way back in June. And they thought this was going to be a short-lived boycott. They thought it was only going to be a couple of weeks. And now we're about 6 months into the boycott. And according to industry experts, Bud Light have lost 20% of their customer base. And obviously I thought it would be a lot bigger than that, but 20% is huge. It's a huge deal, especially in just 6 months. And they've lost their #1 beer status too, to Modelo Especial. And in another desperate move, Bud Light have partnered with UFC of all organizations. Obviously, UFC has a very masculine brand. It appeals to men who like beer. Bud Light have hit the jackpot when it comes to partnerships, when it comes to their brand, when it comes to rehabilitating their brand, after going from a man who identifies as a woman to now appealing to actual men. Now, if they had done this in the first place, can you imagine how much this would have boosted their brand? Can you imagine how effective of a marketing strategy this would have been? As opposed to moving away from the jocks and the out-of-touch fratty people, something to that effect. If they had gone this route in the first place, they wouldn't be in this mess now. And at this point, who knows? Even UFC may be unable to save them and may end up going down with them too. And it's already started. Anyone who links up with Bud Light may also get the Bud Light treatment. People are already calling for UFC to be boycotted. Now, I don't know how feasible that is. It's one thing not picking up a beer and choosing another brand, but if you're really into a sport, are you going to just stop watching it? So let's take a look. UFC is facing calls for a boycott after the Mixed Martial Arts League announced on Tuesday that it inked a major sponsorship deal with Bud Light. The tie-up with Anheuser-Busch's beleaguered brew, which has been slammed with sharp sales declines since its fleeting ill-fated campaign in April with transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney, is reportedly worth more than $100 million, according to MMA Fighting. UFC Boycott is on, one user shared to X, following the announcement, which will see Bud Light's logo on fighting rinks and in marketing materials as of January. Time to double down on the boycott Bud Light, and now boycott UFC, another posted. While yet another chimed in, dumb move. Well, I'll say, it's definitely a dumb move for the UFC, in my opinion. But let's just be real. When we go to sporting events, we see Bud Light all over the place. And obviously that doesn't mean that you're buying Bud Light, but you see their logo sponsoring this event, along with many other logos, and no one cares. So this may just be that sort of thing. It may end up just being another logo, when you go to watch the UFC. But does that mean people are going to go out and buy Bud Light? Does that mean they're going to patronize Bud Light vendors at these sporting events? I doubt it. That's where we still need to continue the boycott. That's where we still need to just carry on as we've been doing. When I go to sporting events, I went to see hockey the other day and there was Bud Light stands there. I just went elsewhere. I didn't even think anything of it. And I think that's what we're going to continue to see happening. I don't really know how realistic it is to say boycott UFC, because you've had people say they're going to boycott the NFL in the past or boycott whatever sporting event, and it hasn't happened because people love to watch their sports. People love the athletes who they follow, whose careers they follow, whose careers they support. So I don't know how realistic it is to do that, but don't pick up a Bud Light. It's as simple as that. You've chosen another brand, I assume, a long time ago, way back in April. Stick to the new brand, and that's it. I don't think UFC is going to be able to save Bud Light. And of course, UFC is a very masculine brand. I would think that a lot of UFC fighters don't really agree with biological males competing in female sports, for example. I don't think they care to watch a man beat a woman to a pulp because this man identifies as female. I don't think they care too kindly for that. What do they think of it? What do they think of Bud Light partnering with UFC? Bud Light partnered with Dylan Mulvaney not too long ago. So Robbie posted, Bud Light is paying $100 million to be the official beer of the UFC. And you know what? Lighting that money on fire would have been less embarrassing than what's about to happen. Fighters are going to hate this. Fans will hate it. The customers aren't coming back, Bud Light. Period. You made your bed with men who think they're women. Now sleep in it. I get that Dana thinks he has to take the easy money, but this damages the UFC brand and puts his fighters in bad spots where they will speak out against it. Watch. Embarrassment awaits. It does put the fighters in an awkward position, because if they do speak out against it, there's going to be calls for them to be cancelled. It's going to cause more controversy to the UFC. It's going to cause more division. It's going to split people, right down the middle. But at this point, I would think a lot of people are just fed up with the whole thing. So remember Anheuser-Busch, they partnered with Harley Davidson. Again, another brand that's considered quite masculine. And that didn't go down too well. That was mocked. And then they've partnered with charities for veterans, which people just, nobody wanted to criticize that because it's for veterans, but it still didn't help Bud Light. They partnered with Travis Kelce. And of course, there's always the danger that the company they partner with is also going to receive the Bud Light treatment. Why they would risk it, I don't know. But clearly, it was an offer they couldn't refuse. So one user said, should the UFC have signed a deal with Bud Light? In my opinion, no. Will Bud Light recover? Unlikely. Go woke, go broke. An additional user wrote, echoing the sentiment, that first circulated social media when Bud Light aligned itself with Mulvaney in an ill-fated attempt to move on from its fratty image, enraging Americans who claimed the beer pointlessly injected politics into its brand. And of course, they failed to even acknowledge that they made a mistake with partnering with Mulvaney. They are still yet to acknowledge that, and obviously by now it's too late. Forget the apology, it's not going to happen. You've made yourself very clear. All they're doing is throwing more money into their marketing. Rather than addressing the elephant in the room, they're just throwing more money at it. And that's what the CEO said he was going to do. We've got all these great marketing campaigns. We've got this, easy to drink, easy to enjoy campaign coming out, going back to our roots. Remember they did their patriotic commercials, these sort of things, featuring regular Americans. Even fratty types were featured in their commercials. Another user on X wondered how popular Spotify podcaster and MMA announcer Joe Rogan would respond to the news of the partnership, as he's publicly called Mulvaney mentally ill and an attention 304. But apparently he did drink Bud Light on his show one time, to defy the boycott. But I think eventually he started to see why people were so outraged. Can't wait to hear how Joe Rogan tries to worm his way through this announcement. He supported the BR boycott, but is attached to UFC at the hip, the ex-user shared. So Rogan is yet to publicly comment on the partnership. And apparently this is not the first time Bud Light have partnered with the UFC. This is somewhat of a reunion. They already partnered together in 2019. Who would have thought how far the brand would have fallen since then? So yesterday, Bud Light announced on their Twitter, or X, that we're proud to announce that starting in 2024, we'll once again be the official beer sponsor of UFC. Will Dylan be the ring girl? It won't help. Too little, too late. Please go away. And that's the thing, with all their marketing, they're continuing to get in our faces. And people are like, go away already. But as long as you don't buy Bud Light, as long as you stay away from the beer, that's essentially the same effect. Now, of course, being a sponsor of UFC, we're going to see even more of them now. And it is annoying. But remember, this is one of the greatest boycotts of all time. We did that. And it doesn't look like it's letting up anytime soon. When you go to a UFC fight, get another beer. But we see Bud Light logos all over the place when we go to our sporting events anyway. People are used to it. But that doesn't mean they're going to buy the beer. That doesn't mean when they go to their local supermarket, they're going to stock up on Bud Light. So UFC's Twitter is also getting some backlash, as you can imagine. People are posting on posts that have nothing to do with Bud Light.
Comes to Anheuser-Busch and Bud Light. This was, everybody talks about, oh, you did it for money. Hey, dummies, all sponsorship deals are about money, okay? So when you talk about being a sellout, I had multiple deals in front of me. So it's not like, oh, Bud Light showed up and they were the only option I had to get money. You know how stupid that is to think that, this was all about, and I said this yesterday, and I'll say it again, everybody on every side of this deal that were involved, other beer companies and everything else, absolutely positively know that this was not about money for me. We were going to end up with money with no matter who we ended up with. For Anheuser-Busch, it was about values, core values for me. I'm at a point in my life and I'm at a point in my career where nothing is just about money anymore. I am very aligned, and I saw some other asshole today saying, oh, it sounds like they wrote him a script on what to say. Nobody writes me a script. Nobody tells me what to say, ever. I do things because when I come out and I say something publicly, if you look at every quote, right, that I put out, you can ask Lene, every quote is me. Every quote is me. Everything that's posted on social media is me. And everything that comes out of this mouth is me. Nobody tells me what to say and nobody tells me what to do, ever. And the things that I said about Anheuser-Busch and Bud Light yesterday are absolutely true. I am a big military law enforcement guy. They have this Folds of Honor where they've spent $44 million over the last however many years fallen first responders and military people. Their families get taken care of with this money. Scholarships for their kids, etc. That is right up my alley. Almost $1 billion a year go to U.S. farmers for their crops, for their products. That is right up my alley. That's exactly who I am. 65,000 Americans are employed by Anheuser-Busch, and thousands of them are vets. Right up my alley. And I could keep going on forever and tell you why I am more aligned with Anheuser-Busch than any of the other beer companies that were offering to pay us money.
And someone asked, how many men are switching to the women's division now that you've sponsored Bud Light? UFC is dead to me. So UFC fighters have spoken out against biological males in women's sports. Basically, biological males deciding that they're going to infringe upon women's spaces of any kind. So of course people are wondering, what do they think about the UFC supporting a brand that is all for that? Because they sponsored Dylan Mulvaney, somebody who says they identify as a woman, somebody who is winning Women of the Year awards. Rather than that going to actual biological female, it went to Dylan. Rather than them sponsoring a woman, if they wanted to appeal to more women, they sponsored Dylan. So this is somebody who has no problem being put in the place of a woman. Dylan has no problem doing that. And Bud Light co-signed that. So yes, it does make me wonder, what do these UFC fighters who have been brave enough to speak out and stand up, for women athletes, what do they now think of this? What message does it give? Because it does give the message that UFC is okay with biological males replacing women or infringing upon women's sports. It does give that message as an organisation. And a sporting body who has female athletes should be looking out for the interests of those athletes, and partnering with a brand that doesn't mind biological males replacing women gives the wrong message. Do you think UFC are now going to receive the Bud Light treatment and face the same repercussions that Bud Light have had to deal with? I'm not so convinced on that, but as for Bud Light, the boycott continues. And let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves, and God willing, I will see you in the next video.